And go.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. As we are in the midst of VMworld, a most interesting VMworld, I can say, from the rest of us. The whole idea that we've brought the entire world together into a single event, but it's the reasons why it was brought together as a single event, as why we're here today. So what I've done is I've asked some of my illustrious coworkers if they wouldn't mind introducing themselves. But first, I should introduce myself. My name is Jon Hildebrand. I am, well, what am I? A master of all sorts of titles now at Cohesity. Principal technologist, recently added some field CTO duties. At some particular point, I don't know, maybe I'll be the custodian at the San Jose office while we're at it at the same time. Should we ever be able to travel back again. So I'll turn it over to the rest of my team for introductions.
So I guess I'll start next. I'm up at the top of the screen, so I'll go with me. Hey, everybody. I am Mike Letchin. I'm the Director of Technical Advocacy here at Cohesity. And the important part, I think, for this discussion is I'm based in Washington, D.C. So at least I used to say I was based out of Reagan Airport, Gate 37, but haven't been able to do that in quite a while. So now I'm actually based in D.C. John skipped the part that he is in Kansas City. And then as we go around, I think the next introduction will be from Patrick.
Yeah, hi, I'm Patrick Redknapp, and I'm based in the UK, so I'm going to give you more of a European take on everything. I'm a consultant with Cohesity, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I keep everyone very English from my side of things, and that's really what I do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Miller, and I am based in the Midwest in Wisconsin, the southeastern part of the state. I am also with Cohesity, a principal technologist. Like John, we're playing with the field CTO role as well. And I'm kind of looking forward to talking about our overall overarching topic for today in terms of how we've all been impacted. So really looking forward to that, and I'm going to throw this back to John to kick that off.
All right. Well, Mike, you kind of alluded to it. Last year, many of us were spending a lot of time in airports, whether it was airport lounges, sitting at gates, enjoying the features of status, maybe in first class, or maybe getting out of coach seating to some degree. We all of a sudden that evaporated. I'm sitting here trying to remember exactly what the inside of my airport looks like. Now, maybe that's a good or a bad thing, considering, as Mike said, I'm from Kansas City. And every time I look at a list of the worst 50 airports in the United States, Kansas City's right there behind Philadelphia. So that tells you how bad that is. But for some of us, the adjustment for travel has been a little bit of a shock to the system. I know personally, my family's had to get used to me actually being here on a regular basis. And that's something that they were a little, I guess, weirded out early on, but have kind of adjusted over the course of time. So since, Mike, you offered up first talking about that you've lived at Reagan Airport in DC, how has the travel aspect of this particular job and its lack thereof had some sort of impact on how you've approached anything in 2020 thus far?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely has had a huge impact on that. I remarked to someone the other day that I think I have slept in my bed every night for the last over 6 months now, and it's the first time I've done that in over a dozen years. I'm not used to being in one spot and within four walls on it. And I think for a lot of people that went from being at offices and then working from home on it, for us, like when we were home, we worked from home. I think we were used to that. It wasn't the work from home. It was the change of not being someplace else, not being able to walk into a coffee shop and work from there, not being able to walk into your, potentially for Patrick, the local pub. I'm not going to judge. You never know.
That's true.
But I think the not traveling, I actually have had that reaction, and that I wonder at times whether my wife would like me to just go take a vacation by myself so she also gets some alone time. Because I think we're both all everyone got used to our schedules on it. Everyone, our family, our pets, our significant others, our kids. I mean, I know I was out walking my dog the other day and I saw a dog that was laying in a hole he had dug in the front yard. And then I saw a bunch of kids running around. I'm pretty sure the dog was trying to hide from the kids because he was tired of just being chased by kids all day. I'm pretty sure that's what he was doing. He didn't answer when I asked, but I think that's where he was at on it. So I think not being on the road, one, it has had to adjust on how much time and figuring out what are other hobbies. There's a lot of things around the house or just other hobbies that I never had time for. It's finding new groups of friends during a quarantine where you're not spending time with people so that you're not, as us being more social people. I think it's hard to have that. I mean, a lot of my friends over the years, because of so much travel, have been scattered around the planet. Not as many, not a huge base of friends in DC. So it's been finding kind of different groups and from hobbies and people to see, people to enjoy company with, obviously with distance involved as needed to be safe. But so how about you, Teresa? I mean, you went from being on the road pretty frequently to being on your back 40 half the time.
Yeah. So all of you definitely were traveling, I think, a little bit more than I was. I think I was hitting about 30%, which is still I was gone, like I would say a good week ish, 7 to 10 days a month with that. So I would say that the focus, well, one thing was that there was an assumption that just because we knew how to work remote, that this wasn't impacting us, but it was, because now all of a sudden I had my whole family there. I had dogs barking in the background. I actually do have an office outside of my home. I couldn't even go to my office because we all got quarantined. I'm now there and functioning. So I at least get that feeling now of leaving my home and working. But now with kids in school, as you are aware, we tried in person, but now that just all got shut down. So I still have kids. I have one on the other side of the wall here and one that's going to be in the laundry room at this office just a little bit later today in a couple of hours. So it definitely has been impacting. Now, my state, I will say, let's talk about those geographics a little bit, hasn't been impacted as bad. So like, I think, I went from grocery shopping curbside to going into a grocery store. I actually did go do some regular leisure shopping a couple weekends ago. And for the first time, I've resisted hugs. I'm a hugger. I am a hugger. I've only hugged people in my house until 2 weeks ago. My friend's she's like, what if we just put on our masks? And I'm like, that was like the best hug I've had in months. I was like, wow, I'm so glad we did that, because you forget those things that people need people. And I think we're not taking those opportunities because the media has made us so afraid. But I don't know, there has to be some give. We still have to live our lives and find that balance.
So Patrick, you guys had a difference in the UK on it. I mean, you guys opened up a lot at one point and have had to go back. So how's it kind of, you've been through kind of the wave, a few waves.
Well, we're in the second wave, quote unquote, now. The thing that's really weird for it generally is we had the first wave and they locked us down completely. They were like, don't go out unless you're shopping, and that's it pretty much, unless it's essential. And so they locked us all down for, I think it was like 2 months. And I was at home constantly during that whole time. I've never had so many Amazon deliveries in my whole life. And that was really weird. And also what was really weird for me is I generally am in London every other week. And I think now I'm 6 months without going to London, which is strange for me. Because, that's kind of like my second working spot anyway. So that's been weird for me. But we came out of lockdown and the government were like, right, we need to get everyone back to as normality as possible. So you still have to wear masks and no contact and hand sanitizer and all this stuff. But they said to us, okay, you can go to the pub or the restaurant and we'll pick up half the check. And that's not worked out quite as well as they'd hoped, because we're going into what they say is a second wave now. So it's happening now. It's evolving. So every day, they just announced yesterday there's all these new measures and stuff that are coming in. So we'll see where we go from there. But as far as working goes, I think that my work that I'm doing at the moment is pretty. I didn't have to adapt too much as compared to a lot of people generally. So it's been interesting, but I know that there are a lot of people suffering a lot harder with work than I am. So I'm kind of grateful for that.
Well, that does kind of bring me into another interesting point for this, which has been kind of the economics of this whole lockdown and how that's affected a lot of companies. I mean, we have plenty of folks in our field who have been let go or have been needing to find new positions. I can't imagine the idea, as Teresa even mentioned, the concept of worrying about grocery store shopping and then also having to worry about, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to be able to, at least over here, especially in the States, since your job is usually associated with health insurance, what if I do get sick? Now I don't have any coverage. So there's a lot of stress that's being added to a lot of folks. And combine all this together and if you want to call it, I hate to call it a seismic adjustment. I'm not going to use the term of what is the term of this unprecedented time. No, it's not unprecedented. It's just we've never dealt with it in our particular lifetimes. It's been a couple of generations since we've had to deal with a good worldwide pandemic. I mean, we have the stories from the 1918s for the flu outbreaks and things like that, but this is hit on just multiple aspects, between whether it's just combine it all together. Everybody's just a big ball of stress. I mean, I remember even just talking with neighbors, you could see the distance. Everybody looked like they needed a release. So, Mike, you mentioned something earlier about hobbies, things like that. What have you developed a new release during this particular time, especially knowing full well that friends are losing jobs? You're in that we always have to look over our own shoulders during this particular time just to make sure things are doing well across the board, and at the same time making sure you just don't get yourself sick. So I guess from my perspective, I mean, being a relative shut-in anyway, and having some high-risk folks here in the house, I can't really go out even if I wanted to, because the last thing I need is any sort of any sort of added pressure of getting somebody in my house sick. That's not something I want to end up having on my conscience to some degree. So that being said, I mean, all I've managed to do is figure out at nighttime is reacclimate myself to video games that I wasn't able to drag with me when I was on the road. So what have the rest of you been able to do during this particular time to kind of, I don't know, bring a little bit of normalcy back to the craziness that is trying to exist 24/7 in this particular world where it seems like everything's out to get you?
I can jump in on that. So my yard has never looked so good. Between my yard and painting, like there were rooms in the house that hadn't been painted in like 20 years. They're all done. I think we did the kitchen, the mudroom / laundry room. We did bedroom, and there was at least one more. So all kinds of painting and redecorating, and the yard looks fantastic. It's the yard I always wanted.
I definitely think that's been the case with a lot of things. I did a yard project which I've been putting off for a while. So I actually had it scheduled in with builders, and they couldn't do it, so I ended up just doing it all myself. And so that's pretty much done. But I did choose the wrong time right before the pandemic to knock my office down. So I've been working around various spots in the house for the last 6 months because I can't. I've actually been doing the office myself. I'm nearly done with that. But it's weird how you take on these extra projects to relieve the stress as well. I did find time to, when they took Portugal off our quarantine list, to go over to a weekend to Portugal and then back again. But then while I was over there, they put me back on the quarantine list. So I'm coming back. I'm actually on the back end of a quarantine now, which is being enforced. You've got like tracking and tracing here. So I'm not allowed outside until Monday. So that's been a bit stressful.
Yeah, I think for me, living in downtown DC, I don't have the yard to go take care of. So that wasn't an issue. It was something we gave up intentionally moving downtown. But like, I know there's definitely been things I picked up before the pandemic. Things were going great. I picked up a boat. So I've been able to take the boat out some, which has been great because in all reality, it's very easy to be socially distanced when the only people on the boat are the only people you're easily within. If you're within a thing more than 6 feet from anyone on any other boat, there's a much bigger problem. So that's been pretty easy on it. As you guys know, I've spent a lot of time doing a few upgrades on my Jeep and getting out and actually being able to enjoy some of the trails in Virginia and Pennsylvania that are off-road trails that in all reality, it's very easy. Again, there are things that I've had to find that get me out of the house, but still keep me separated from people, I think, while still kind of being within a group of people. So it's this weird blend. And it's a group I see pretty often, so I feel a little more comfortable about it, I think. I know that, like, for my wife, it's been a real challenge because her job is as a dancer, and she's a professional dancer, and the places haven't been open. So that her relief has always been going to class and finding ways to do more dance, to train and things like that. And that hasn't been an option. They've been doing a lot more of like Instagram Live and Facebook Live and doing classes online, and it is not quite the same. For sure. So I know when you said, Teresa, about painting the house, we definitely have had a few rooms around the house that my wife has painted because she was in the same boat. Even found a wallpaper for one room that she liked to do wallpaper in one of the bathrooms. So I think it's been finding those little hobbies. I do think, though, John, as we talked about on the economics of it too, though, I've tried to be real cognizant about not being very public about things I'm doing or things I'm working on, because there are so many people that are struggling regardless, that even though I might be finding things to go out and do things, I don't want it to appear like I'm not trying to rub it in anyone's face that these are things I'm able to do because we're fortunate on it. Like if there are ways to help them, it would be great, but I think we just, there's a weird middle ground that we have to find sometimes.
I think you're right. Actually, to that point, so I'm a huge, I always have been like really interested in helping people through like the local food pantry, and we have the hunger task force. So when I've been finding the opportunity to, give a little something back, like you said, I don't share a lot of that on social either, but when I can give back, I do. And I don't share that typically either, but I feel like, really don't actually have to. Like, it just makes you feel good inside to give back. And I think to also add to the economics element, I think from what I've seen, at least in my area, it seems like it's more the small businesses than anything else, and the restaurants. But in my area, a lot of the small businesses are the restaurants. So it's been really tough. So I think initially we were afraid to even do carry out. We're definitely doing carry out now and trying to support some of those local people in our community as well.
Yeah, no, we've since the beginning, we've been trying to choose our favorite local establishments because my wife is big in following the food scene all over the place. And when you see high prominent chefs, even like from the New York City area, who've been claiming that this is going to be a destruction to the restaurant industry and to a lot of service industry positions that are out there. I mean, we traveled a lot. Imagine now on the ripple effect to all those folks who work in hotels or who do any sort of, even like event planning and things like that are being hit really hard. And then on top of it, because of the lack of spending in our tech industry, we've seen a lot of the bigger companies shed a lot of their workforce on top of it. So mean, there's ripple effects all over the place. There's places that are being hit awfully hard. And, you know, I'm in the same realm. I'm not looking for a pat on the back for trying to help folks, but we were all just trying to do what we can to help others get by. And that's the most important thing, because of being distanced away and separated away, we're all trying to do the best that we can. And it's, you know, we're not glory seeking. We're not trying to rub it in anybody's face that we're still employed or still getting a decent paycheck, but we're still living and helping, which is, I think, is at the end of the day what we're still trying to. At least I know 7 months into this, I'm still trying to establish some shred of that being the normalcy compared to, you know, years of everything up to that particular point. So, but I guess it shows we're all humans, and we're doing what we can to help ourselves and to help others that are close by us. Even if, as Mike mentioned about the dog wanting to dig itself its own hole to get away from things, we're still standing, we're still helping, and we're still doing, you know, just doing the best that we can, which is all that really can be asked of all of us.
So, John, this is something that I think was interesting that I had to deal with recently. Have you guys all had any like special events or anything you've had to deal with during the pandemic? Weddings or birthdays or sadder events? And unfortunately, Teresa, I know you've had some you've had to deal with on it. So how have you guys, what have you had to do to shift and adjust on those?
Well, I'll make a mention again that my direct family, so my wife and my son, are listed as high risk due to some asthma problems. So we've been probably more doubly or triply quarantined to some degree. I mean, we rarely leave the house unless we absolutely have to. So having family members so I had my nephew up in who lives about 6 hours away up in the state of Iowa. They were adamant that, hey, once this is done, we're going to have his graduation party. We'd like to have you there. We're not going. We can't make it. That's as simple as that. We have to we're practicing our best to distance ourselves away from things. It doesn't, it's put a little bit of strain on some family relations because of it, but you know, we've got to protect those closest to us, and we'll be able to resume those sorts of things when it's safe enough for those folks to not get those sorts of things, to get the impacts of this particular virus on top of it.
Yeah, I know people who have been doing the same thing. They've been shielding, they've had birthdays, they've had anniversaries, they're doing none of it at all because they can't. It's impossible. You know, every year, my wife she makes a point of throwing me a big birthday party with all my friends. This year, it was my wife and my brother and one friend, and that was it. So it went down to very, very small. I got lucky because when my birthday was here, the R number had come down very low. But still, it's like you've got to be socially responsible with regards. You can't have massive parties. You can't invite tons of people around because even if you trust all your friends, you don't know what they're doing themselves, you know, and it's an expanded network the further out you go anyway. You've got to be socially responsible. And I think some people get that. There's obviously some people who aren't getting it, but again, it's you've got to look after your family first and then look after friends separately and everything like that, and just be responsible. And I've seen a lot of people doing it, and it's necessary. I think it's something which people are I think it's being hammered home a lot more now because this isn't going away anytime soon.
So I know we had to deal with it for a wedding on us. One of my closest friends was getting married in California. Being in DC, obviously getting to California, we weren't getting on a plane to go do it. And then we looked at so many options on trying to make it there, but it just didn't work. Like there was just no way we could make it work and everyone feel safe about it. I mean, we were lucky we were able to do, we basically a bunch of, even people in California that weren't around, we did a virtual kind of surprise bridal shower a couple of days before the wedding for her. Nice. So at least we could kind of celebrate and talk to her. It's still not the same as being able to celebrate, but I know they knew they did something real small. It's very small. Like it ended up being just kind of in a backyard wedding, and then they'll do something bigger, hopefully next year. And then we can all come out next year and actually celebrate with them. But it definitely is a significant change. So I know, Teresa, I'm assuming you were going on a much more somber note.
Well, I have a lot of varying elements in this area. So I too have a higher risk person in my household, and so we were being super, super, super careful. And then after a doctor appointment and a visit, they gave us a lot more comfort. I think the nutshell element of it, I'll just say, is immune suppression, right? So not having the ability to potentially fight it off quite the same way. But I actually think in this case, because they're like she should be going to school. If she wants a job, let her get a job. I think the issue is just making sure you're masking and washing your hands. So we have and our area is not as affected, so we have backed off some. Masks and hand washing are huge for us. But as for so how has that affected us and the things that we've done? So I think first of all, I had a grandpa pass, right? So 3 tries at that funeral before we finally got to have it. I think it took us 3 or 4 months. So there was that. And then a wedding that was supposed to be in June, they totally rescheduled. My birthday was basically in quarantine. And then I think the only other one was another birthday for my goddaughter. And we opted not to go because it was in that really, really uncertain time before we had all the conversations to give us at least some comfort. So I mailed her present, and we just did a FaceTime and wished her a happy birthday. And, you know, they had varying levels of comfort for that party. Like some people did a car parade, came by and, you know, just kind of waved from their cars and made that fun. Some people, I noticed, grabbed lawn chairs and sat out in their yard, but just sat like 6 feet apart. So I'm sure it's a birthday she'll never forget because, you know, it had so many different, I guess, opinions, right? Everyone had their own opinion of what made them feel comfortable. So she got it all. Like I said, FaceTime parades, some people stayed. But so anyways.
That's been one of the things, actually, I mentioned the hobby of doing more on the Jeep. That's been a common thing that we get asked for, is because it's a pretty large group of people that are around our Jeeps that we get asked to do, like show up to go past kids' birthdays often. Like probably almost every other weekend there's a, hey, this 6-year-old loves Jeeps. You got to drive past. Last week it was one of the girls in the group's niece's 21st birthday, so she wanted 21 Jeeps to drive by.
Nice.
Something little.
That's a big thing. That's a big thing in the technology industry, though, isn't it? Everyone's got Jeeps. How many of you have got Jeeps in the family?
No.
I think it's just me.
My brother has a Jeep, but he's not in tech.
No. It's definitely a thing I've seen on Twitter. You guys are like, you might as well just call it like V Jeeps or something like that.
Geeks with Jeeps.
Yeah.
There we go.
There are a few.
Speaking of other nerd-related things related to the community, my biggest one, especially with everybody being home, has been the dorks with forks. Especially the folks who are showing all their new cooking abilities that they've learned, or since they're home all the time. So for those of us who haven't been still supporting local restaurants, the rest of everybody's apparently trying to audition to be on MasterChef or any of the other home cooking competitions that are going to be on TV. So that or baking bread. What was the running joke that everybody had a sourdough starter at the beginning of all this?
Yeah, so that one.
Yeah. So how's everybody's sourdough starter working?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
We do have a smoker though. We actually bought a smoker a couple of years ago, and I think we had used it twice until now. And now we smoke brisket, and we had ribs last weekend. And
I have done my ribs in my smoker a lot recently, more than I had probably in a few years. Yeah.
Being in Kansas City, one of the barbecue capitals, at least of not only the U.S. but the world, everybody's required to have a fancy grill and a smoker and know how to use it. So it's pretty much. I can look on anybody's deck over the course of a weekend, or depending upon if you got time to watch it during the week, especially for the long-term smoking stuff, the 12 to 18 hour things. And there's always a good smell of, either hickory or cherry or apple wood going on somewhere in the neighborhood.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty much. Also, I did manage to get Mike to try and figure out what the difference between a cookie and a biscuit is. Because he's been watching the Great British Bake Off a lot. It's a big
We
debate.
got through the Great British Bake Show. I mean, there's one for you. How many different shows have you guys gone through that you've watched that? Like, I know I used to watch stuff on planes, and with like I get through some movies or occasional shows, but I didn't really watch a lot because it was really kind of my downtime on a plane. I would watch it, but when I was sitting in a hotel, the most I would do was turn the news on, so I had some idea what was going on in the world. And then at home, you're trying to do other things. So, have you guys binged through a bunch of shows these last 6 months too?
You know what? I've never really been a huge TV guy, but okay. I have caught myself catching some of the, what is it, The Boys from Amazon Prime, and
that's good.
I know early on there was always what was it? The Tiger King that everybody was talking about earlier. So I realize folks are binging. I'm not as participating in that and running Netflix traffic, but my kid is definitely watching like everything Transformers related on Netflix at the moment and watching it like 4 times over.
Well, they brought out Disney Plus right during the pandemic as well, and but for us anyway, I think it came out before Christmas for you guys in the US, but in Europe it came out March, and because they just released the Mandalorian and everything, they also had all the old Clone Wars cartoons or whatever, I think it's animated cartoons, and I watched all of those because they're tying all of the plot lines for that into the new series of the Mandalorians coming out next month. So I binge watched all that in my free time, and I think I got through 7 seasons of it.
That's funny.
Like one season a month.
I am a movie person, and I am just struggling right now because movies there's nothing new.
They're not making them.
I know. So it feels like I'm just always scraping the bottom of the barrel on TV. I don't know. On the other hand, though, like my daughter did a full binge watch of Friends. Like she did like a Friends marathon that went on for a couple of weeks, and so now she's fully educated and up on Friends.
That's good. So she's up to date with everyone, so she can have the conversation. So
yeah,
we started to do that with Big Bang Theory.
Yeah,
I
watched that. I did watch that. Actually, that was one show that was always on in our house. So I've seen that one. I didn't have to binge watch.
Yeah, we had too. I think it was interesting. You realize there's things that change as you binge watch from the beginning. Like Sheldon actually gets weirder as the seasons go on.
Yes.
It's like watching a movie you don't get for the first time. It's like you watch it the second time, you get a bit more exposition of what's happening and stuff. It's true. I actually managed to go and see the new Christopher Nolan film in the cinema.
Nice.
When they reopened up the cinema, we all went in there with masks. They sit you like 3 rows away from everyone and across. Though it didn't matter because it turned out there were only like 10 people in the whole theater. So it was pointless.
Well, and that's what I'd say. I'm not much of a TV guy, but kind of in Teresa's realm, I love going to the movie theater, and I can't tell if it's mostly for the movie or it's for the popcorn. Either way, I miss both.
And I think it's the popcorn.
I miss the movies.
I try. I cannot recreate the movie theater popcorn at home. It just does. It's just not the same.
They've got drive-ins coming around in the States at the moment, though. I think they're starting to do them here as well.
Yeah, they turned one of the parking lots at the old stadium here into a drive-in. And they're very strict about it. Like, there's no tailgating. It is you stay in your car. And, like, they will kick you out if you try to get out of your car other than, like, to walk to, like, the bathrooms.
No tailgating. That's so American. You wouldn't even think that as an option.
But you want to. So we have a drive-in, like, 5 minutes from my house. It's there always. And we opted not to go because I knew it just wouldn't be the same for the reasons Mike just described. So I guess that perspective only probably comes because we have that luxury. So it wasn't, I don't know. We just didn't take advantage of it. And they would be shut down at this point in the year. So
So ours are actually doing things where like they're doing performances. There's a stage in front of it, so they're doing like projection stuff on the screen, and then they'll have one person at a time on the stage,
Yeah, that's
like
awesome.
mic'd up. So it's the only way you can get any live entertainment right now because they're not allowing any live entertainment here, which is hurting. Obviously, there's a lot of live music venues too, and that's something we didn't touch on really. Like concert seasons, concert venues. Like in DC, we've got a ton of like small concert venues that haven't been able to do anything for 6 to 8 months. Like they're not going to survive.
No,
Like they just, I mean, the rent is absorbing it. There's no way. Like you have to pay things.
right.
Yeah.
There's one in Milwaukee that's shutting down because they just can't do it anymore. Like you said, they've got bills to pay. They can't pay them if people can't come.
Yeah,
I think when we get back to some degree of normalcy, when it starts getting back to there might even be a resurgence of people's entrepreneurship in these areas, though. You know, I think it's going to be a shame to see all these businesses close, but I think there's going to be new opportunities as well. It's just, you know, how long is a piece of string? When's that going to happen?
Yeah. Well, as we're getting closer and closer, I won't say towards the end of this, I do want to ask everybody, especially since we've had a major impact. We used to cover a lot of these different trade shows, and a lot of it was in-person related. So the biggest question I have for the rest of you is more just you can do your opinion based off of this, but do you feel now that this is going to heavily impact once we're done with this, so you say we've gotten past this, we're not at the super risk for things. Are we going to continue to do large scale in-person events from a tech industry perspective? Are we going to have 25,000 people, 50,000 people, if you're like reInvent or any of these other things, converging onto cities for a 4 or 5 day marathon? Or is this going to be the new thing where we're trying to do worldwide coverages over a 72-hour period utilizing Zoom and other technologies that we have out there?
Well, I sure hope we go back to it, but I know I miss it. But I do hope that companies who had the opportunity to test these large scale events virtually move to, I mean, it's total tech term, but move to a hybrid model. Like, I think it should be both because I think they learned that they get larger attendance virtually, but there's nothing that can replace that in-person collaboration and learning for those that can get there.
Well, I'll even mention you during this particular, while we're recording this, the Microsoft Ignite conference has been going on, and paying attention to some of the community aspects. A lot of people are like, well, the sessions are okay, but it was that kind of the undercurrent, the other things that were happening that they missed the most. It's hard to recreate the camaraderie. It's hard to recreate. I mean, I don't know how many times I've done things like Cisco Live in Vegas where, hey, let's grab the Cisco champions and go hit the Rera Irish pub over and over and over again. You can't do that when you're doing these sorts of things, and trying to keep people engaged has been a little bit of an issue. So it's going to be interesting to see how, especially this conference, from start to finish, just how engaged folks are going to be with either the sessions. I don't think are going to be that big of an issue. It's going to be the other things that we tend to go to these events for, building personal relationships, and whether it's expanding our brands or doing other things on, say, community stages or other things, or just the simple, hey, let's go grab lunch. You can't do that with this particular platform.
Yeah,
I think.
Go ahead, Grace.
I think people will embrace it slightly, though, because the whole thing that a lot of people look. Obviously, you go to the conference for your business intelligence, but you also, one of the great parts, like you said, is that you get to reconnect with people that you, on a social level, and you don't see that often, or you're going to see this person at VMworld. You're going to catch up with this group of people, like, and you're going to go down that pub, like you said. And I think that's something which people are still going to have to get on with virtually, even if it comes to socializing via Zoom or in Discord, just because it's the only real option they've had. And I've done some virtual events during the lockdown where there was 5 or 6 community members on it, and they were like, this is great. I haven't seen this many people of like friends or together in one go. And
I think that's
really
the
going
challenge.
to be beneficial.
That's the challenge, is how do you get small enough groups in a large thing? Like when we're doing it, we're talking about all the other things, but it's not the time in front of with 300 or 25,000 people. It's those when you get to go to the bar with 4, 5, 6 people, you go grab a meal with a few people, or we've all been doing this for quite a while. The people that may be coming up that are like, oh, I know that person did something. I want to be able to go talk to them or see them speak or go talk that. Yeah, you can watch them speak on Zoom, but it's not the same if you can't go up and talk to them right afterwards and have a conversation. Hey, I did such and such. Or I think I agree with you, Teresa, that I think there's going to have to be some hybrid. I don't know that we'll go back to 25,000, 50,000 people. No. I wouldn't be surprised to see them more regional, that maybe they're all on the same day, but that there are more regional, that you've got 4,000 people or 3,000 people on the East, 3,000 people on the West. And some of the stuff are cross streaming and some of it is virtual between them, as well as people being able to join in remotely virtually. But I wouldn't be surprised to see much smaller regional events have a resurgence.
There will be impact on your network as well, though, because it's a lot harder to replicate like forging a new social connection or a business connection from these conferences through the digital medium. If you're doing an online event, it's just a lot harder. How do you say hi to someone and then, have a conversation that way?
Right.
That's where I was going to go to. I think it's the business element of it. It's social, it's personal, but it's definitely the business element. And when you're not in person with somebody, you also don't feel their true energy. Like it's really hard to feel a person's energy through a meeting like this. And I think that really helps us know who we really, I don't know, it makes a big, it's how you make a connection, right? If you're on the same page with that person, on that same wavelength, have things in common, if you're in person. I don't know, it just isn't there right now.
Well, I noticed that we're starting to get towards the end of this. We're getting up to our 40-some minute block. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us here. Thanks to Mike, Pat. Should I call you Patrick or Pat? I always forget.
You can say either. It's fine.
The Englishman. Thanks to the Englishman for showing up, and Teresa bringing the hair where the rest of us cannot bring the hair. So I just do want to close this out quick by stating that it's been a very interesting year. We've all had to go through some shred of adjustments, but at the end of the day, our tight-knit technical community, we're here to help. Whether it's you need just to talk to somebody, whether it's you need to vent to somebody, whether it is you want folks to celebrate with, we're all here for each other. And we just need to continue to do that. So I think I speak on behalf of all of us when I state stay safe. And hopefully in 2021, we'll be seeing you, whether it's San Francisco, Barcelona, or through another Zoom for God knows how many more Zoom meetings we have to get through before this is all said and done. But I think again, stay safe and we'll see you soon.